Thank you for joining me for another episode of A White Woman in Distress. This podcast is dedicated to raising awareness for missing children, teens, and adults who have vanished under heartbreaking circumstances. My mission is simple: to keep their stories alive and to help bring them back to their families. In a world where media coverage isn't always equal, it's vital to recognize that many cases go overlooked. Marginalized groups, including Indigenous people, people of color, the LGBTQ+ community, runaway teens, and homeless individuals. They often face systematic barriers leading to underinvestigation and inadequate attention. These groups deserve to have their stories heard just as loudly, whether it's the jurisdictional complexities affecting Indigenous women and girls, the media bias towards missing people of color, or the stigmas facing runaway teens and those living on the streets. These cases remind us that real change is needed. Grassroots efforts, community engagement, and legislative advocacy are essential in turning the tide. You don't have to be on the front lines to make a difference. Even small actions like sharing information or providing anonymous tips can play a crucial role in bringing loved ones home. Every family deserves answers, and every missing person deserves to be found. Before we dive into today's story, please be aware that content may include themes of violence, sexual assault, or other distressing topics. Listener discretion is advised.
Today, we're diving into one of Utah's oldest and most mysterious missing persons case, which is the disappearance of 15-year-old Reed Jeppson from Salt Lake City, Utah in 1964. This case is not only perplexing, but it definitely is very mysterious, and it remains unsolved after nearly 60 years. It's definitely one of those cases where the community is still holding on to hope despite all of the years passing that one day there will be answers. Like always, let's talk about who Reed was. Reed was a bright young teenager who was active in school and sports. He loved animals, but most of all, he loved his dog. But on a seemingly ordinary Sunday, he simply vanished and was never to be seen again. His disappearance left an emptiness in his family and a mystery that continues to haunt the Salt Lake City community to this day. Reed Taylor Jeppson was born on May 28, 1949. He was the second youngest of 11 children in a large family. They were a super close-knit and well-known family in the Salt Lake City area. His father, Edward Jeppson, was a local doctor within the community, and Reed was described as a cheerful and active boy. At the time of his disappearance, he was a sophomore at East High School and played football. He was known for being a reliable and hardworking teen and paperboy. Reed had even recently scored his first touchdown for his school team, which was something he was incredibly proud of. And I mean, who wouldn't be? That's a huge achievement. What stood out most about Reed, though, was his love and compassion for animals, particularly his two German short-haired pointers. One was a puppy, and the other was a full-grown dog. Reed absolutely loved training these dogs for bird hunting, which was a hobby he really enjoyed. On Sunday, October 11, 1964, the Jeppson family attended church as they normally did every Sunday. After returning home early in the afternoon, Reed grabbed a can of dog food from the kitchen and told his sister Susan that he was going to feed the dogs and take them for a walk. Susan asked him to hurry back and reminded him that dinner would be ready in about 30 minutes. Reed confidently replied, quote, "I'll be back," end quote. He then left the house and walked about 200 yards to the dog kennel, which were located near their home on Immigration Canyon Road, which is only 200 yards, by the way, from their home. This was a normal routine for Reed, something that he did almost daily. However, that afternoon, Reed didn't come back. And this is where the mystery really begins. At first, his family didn't worry too much because, after all, it wasn't unusual for Reed to spend time with his dogs in the canyon. He loved taking them for walks and spending time with them and just training them and being around them. As the hours went by, there was still no sign of him, and their concerns started to grow. Reed had been gone for nearly 12 hours, and then I also saw articles that said 5 hours. So I'm just going to say later in the afternoon. His family began searching the nearby areas but found no trace of Reed or the dogs. I don't think that they would have waited until 1 a.m., which would have been 12 hours from about when they got home, give or take, from church. His family began searching the nearby areas but found no trace of Reed or his dog. That night, they reported him missing to the Salt Lake City Police Department. The search for Reed began immediately. Police officers, volunteers, and the Jeppson family combed through the foothills and the area surrounding the Jeppson home. Unfortunately, despite their efforts, they found nothing, no evidence, no personal belongings, and no sign of his two dogs. It was as if they had just vanished into thin air. A friend of Reed's claimed that he had seen him walking his dogs near the College of St. Mary of the Wasatch. Sorry if I mispronounced that. Around 1 p.m., which is why I find it hard to believe that, they waited 12 hours to report him missing, because I would put him at like 1 a.m. or, closer to midnight, and that area would have been hard to search at night. This location was roughly a 50-minute walk from the Jeppsons' home, but nothing ever came of the sighting. I assume that they checked into this lead and the area and checked to see if anybody else had seen him, but that trail quickly went cold when they couldn't find any evidence. Reed's family couldn't understand what happened to him or the dogs. This was a boy who was known to be responsible and reliable. He wasn't having any personal problems, so he had no reason to run away from home. In fact, Reed had actually left all of his personal belongings at home, including money that he had saved from his paper route, which a few articles were a little off, but it was all around like he had saved $500, which if he was running away, he would have definitely taken all $500. But that's also my opinion. This confused everybody because there were no signs of Reed wanting to leave or talking about leaving to anyone. There were also no signs pointing to him leaving voluntarily. One of the hardest aspects of this case for the Jeppson family was the lack of evidence. Without any solid leads or evidence, the investigation struggled to gain momentum. The authorities were stumped. 3 different states were notified of Reed's disappearance, but no leads ever materialized. I believe every state should have been notified, because the 3 that they had sent it to, just because they were, nearby, doesn't mean that if he did run away, he didn't go anywhere else, right? But again, he wouldn't have run away. There was a rumor of a possibility of Reed having gone to Missouri to visit a girl that he had met while working on a ranch one summer, which was investigated. But that lead, too, went nowhere. I couldn't find the information of, the girl's name or how far it would have been from his house or how much, a bus ticket would have cost, because he would have had to have money, which he didn't have any of it. So that lead obviously isn't the correct one, but I know that they said they looked into it, and I just kind of wanted to know how and much time they had spent looking into it. As time passed, the lack of answers weighed heavily on the family. Reed's sister, Susan Tate, has spoken publicly about how difficult it was for the whole family to cope with his disappearance. In her words, when you have someone missing, the victim isn't the only victim. The whole family suffers. First, there's worry, then that turns into frustration, and after years and years, despair sets in. End quote. Quote, when you have someone missing, the victim isn't the only victim. The whole family suffers. First, there's worry, then that turns into frustration, and after years and years, fear sets in. End quote. Now, there were some troubling aspects to this case that led the family and investigators to suspect that foul play might have been involved. To me, I believe without a doubt that foul play was involved, because you can't just vanish into thin air, especially with 2 dogs. Now, one disturbing lead was the existence of a local suspect who was an older man who lived nearby and reportedly had a history of inappropriate behavior with young boys. I wanted to know more about his name, his history, and why he was known but wasn't in jail. And I couldn't find any source that would give me his specific name, which I'm going to continue to look into it, and hopefully I have an update in a couple of weeks for in-between seasons. But I'm going to do way more snooping for that one, because I want to know what exactly was going on with him. This man was questioned by police, but no concrete evidence linked him to Reed's disappearance, so they couldn't really do anything. Yet, during questioning, he made a strong comment by saying that he appreciated the police, quote, finding out who killed him, end quote, When up to that point, most people just believe that Reed has simply run away, which is wild to me because, again, I want to know more. I want to know why he used that specific word when everyone in the community up to that point knew that he was missing, not dead. Right? That's very, very weird to me, and he should have been in jail. If he would have been in jail because of whatever else he was known for, he should have been in jail. His remark was also paired with the fact that he chuckled afterwards, which was noted by officers, but ultimately it led to nothing substantial. Which, again, why are you laughing at a serious situation? That's really suspicious. He should have been in jail based on, honestly, that statement until he wanted to confess or let them know how he knew that he was killed and not just missing. Now, let's fast forward to 2010. After decades of no new developments, the Salt Lake City Police Department decided to reopen the case. Investigators hoped that advances in forensic technology might provide some new insight. DNA samples were taken from Reed's surviving family members and checked against databases of unidentified remains. The police even released an age-progressed image of what Reed might look like today. They also enlisted the help of cadaver dogs to search areas where new leads had pointed, including a gully near Reed's old neighborhood. However, despite these efforts, no significant evidence was uncovered. In 2012, the case took another creepy turn. A couple that was living in the area found what they believed to be dismembered animal bones wrapped in plastic bags. Now, the couple's property had once belonged to the local suspect, right? Like, if he was known to have inappropriateness with younger men, why wasn't he in jail already? Right? Again, I'm going to do some more research. The bones were suspected to belong to Reed's dog, but after further investigation, nothing conclusive could be determined. I don't really understand what they mean by that, since they should have been able to determine if they were at least dog bones, and they should have probably been able to tell if one was a puppy compared to an adult dog. But again, nothing. Once again, the case hit a dead end. Susan Tate, Reed's sister, believed that her brother was taken against his will. I'm with her on this one. She stated that Reed was not the type of person to just run away and leave everything behind. The family feels that foul play was involved, but has never had the evidence to prove it. I think that the man they interviewed stated the word killed should have been used as evidence because that just simply got overlooked. Reed's case remains open, and the Salt Lake City police continue to welcome tips from the public. His disappearance is the oldest open missing persons case in Utah. But despite all of the years that have passed, Reed's family has never given up hope that someday someone will come forward with the information needed to solve this case. What happened to Reed Jeppson on that fateful day in 1964? Was he abducted by someone in the neighborhood? Did something tragic happen to him while he was walking his dogs in the canyons? And what became of his dogs? Did they meet the same mysterious fate as their owner? These are some of the questions that still haunt Reed's family, even after all these years. If you or anyone you know have any information regarding Reed's disappearance, no matter how small it may seem, please contact the Salt Lake City Police Department. Sometimes it's the smallest clue that can lead to the biggest breakthroughs. Thank you for listening to today's episode. As always, I want you to stay vigilant, stay informed, and let's continue to help raise awareness for those who can no longer speak for themselves. And remember, if you see something, say something, and do something.